Voilà, il est 11h12. Bonjour tout le monde. Je ne sais pas si tout le monde peut m'entendre. Est-ce que vous m'entendez?
Oui, c'est bon.
Merci beaucoup. Alors, il est 11h03. Je me présente. Je m'appelle Lamine Djedjou. Je suis un staff de ILRI. ILRI, je travaille pour ILRI, donc Bureau Afrique de l'Ouest, c'est l'Institut international de recherche pour l'élevage, qui pilote un projet qu'on appelle AICCRA, donc le projet AICCRA, notamment le cluster Sénégal. Et aujourd'hui, nous avons quand même le plaisir de vous convier à ce webinaire. Mais avant tout d'abord, j'aimerais vous souhaiter tous la bienvenue et toutes également. Et pour vous présenter, en tout cas, mes collègues qui sont chargés aujourd'hui de vous animer ce webinaire. Nous avons le docteur Michel John qui va assurer la modération de ces webinaires qui va durer tout au plus 1h30, 1h30, heure Dakar, heure sénégalaise. Nous avons également Dr Nadine Wourou, qui est la coordinatrice scientifique du projet AICCRA au Sénégal. Et nous avons nos illustres, on va dire peut-être, qui vont faire la présentation. Hein. Donc, Jacob Emmanuel, qui est basé en Tanzanie, qui travaille à ILRI et qui intervient dans le projet AICCRA. Et nous avons également notre collègue Bernard, donc, qui auront l'occasion et l'opportunité de se présenter. Sans pour autant tarder, j'aimerais donner la parole à Michel John, le docteur Michel John, pour vous dire un peu comment est-ce que donc, ce webinaire va se passer. Pardon. Donc, va se passer et peut-être vous donner les modalités et, voilà, et plus amples informations. Merci et Michel, à vous.
OK, merci Lamine. Tu me reçois bien? Lamine, tu me reçois bien?
Oui, oui, de mon niveau, oui.
OK, donc c'est-à-dire que les autres me reçoivent. OK, bonjour à tout le monde. Bienvenue à ce webinaire technique. La première chose que je voudrais vous dire, c'est on n'aura pas le temps de se présenter individuellement, mais vous pouvez dans le chat mettre votre nom, votre prénom, l'institut dans lequel vous travaillez, ensuite votre pays. Vous pouvez mettre ça dans le chat. On aura besoin de ces informations à la fin. OK, sans tarder, le webinaire va se passer comme suit. On a deux présentations. La première, c'est sur la fièvre de la vallée du Rift. Comment un outil de prise de décision a été utile pour aider au contrôle des maladies en utilisant des informations météorologiques et des informations du climat. Le deuxième webinaire, c'est par rapport au fourrage, c'est-à-dire que des informations clés sensibles au climat pour mieux orienter la gestion des maladies par rapport au fourrage. Donc, ça sera la deuxième partie. Maintenant, pour la première présentation, on aura à peu près 15 à 17 minutes de présentation, suivi de 20 minutes de questions. Donc, à peu près, ça va prendre 35 à 40 minutes. Et puis, on aura un break de 5 minutes avant de passer à la deuxième présentation. Donc, sans tarder, je vais vous présenter le premier présentateur. Dr Bernard Bett est un chercheur principal à ILRI et il est basé à Nairobi. Il est le chef de l'équipe du centre One Health pour l'Afrique, qui est piloté par ILRI. Ses intérêts de recherche portent sur l'épidémiologie des maladies infectieuses négligées, émergentes et réémergentes. Son objectif est de générer des connaissances pour améliorer la prise de décision politique pour la prévention des maladies zoonotiques en reconnaissant leur mode de transmission complexe, en particulier dans les zones reculées. Bernard s'engage également à encadrer des étudiants et des jeunes chercheurs afin de renforcer les capacités nécessaires pour relever les défis actuels et futurs en matière de santé humaine et animale. Donc, Bernard est basé à Nairobi et de Nairobi, il pilote beaucoup de projets en Afrique et de plus en plus, on commence à pousser beaucoup de projets en Afrique de l'Ouest. Donc, Bernard, the floor is yours for around 15-minute presentation followed by questions. Thank you. Merci beaucoup.
Sorry, Bernard. Michel, s'il vous plaît, juste pour préciser qu'il y a une interprétation donc, qui est prévue. Les présentations vont se faire en anglais, donc les deux présentations, mais nous avons une option interprétation. Donc, s'il vous plaît, pour les participants, vous avez tout en bas de votre écran, quelque part où c'est écrit interprétariat. Donc, vous avez la possibilité de choisir une langue. Les présentations vont se faire en anglais et vous pouvez, par exemple, cocher l'option français et vous allez entendre maintenant l'interprète. Voilà, donc faire en même temps les présentations. Je ne sais pas si vous avez besoin d'informations ou d'explications, ou peut-être Michel, si vous voulez peut-être compléter. Merci.
OK, on va écouter Bernard, oui. OK, le reste, on va compléter.
Yeah, thanks a lot for this opportunity to meet you all and also to share with you our experience in setting up a decision support tool for Rift Valley fever. We'll use an experience from East Africa and see how we can apply the same in Senegal. So as introduced by Michelle, I work here at ILRI Nairobi, and my expertise is on One Health. Of course, I'm trained as a veterinary epidemiologist, and I've been working on RVF for the last 10 years. So for the basic introduction, of course, we know that Rift Valley fever is one of the diseases which affect animals, mainly livestock, cattle, sheep, goats, and camels. And also it has zoonotic potential. That means it can infect humans with disastrous effects. In livestock, it causes abortion in animals and hence a reduction in milk production. It also causes, also one of the measures that we usually use is to prevent or to stop livestock trade. And that has huge economic impacts when it happens. You can see the map on the right here is locations where outbreaks have been reported, marked red, mainly, of course, East Africa, Kenya, Uganda, Tanzania. When it comes to West Africa, we have lots of reports coming from Senegal, Mauritania, and Mali. Recently, also, we had other countries like Niger reporting cases. So what we did is we got surveillance data to analyze so that we can develop what we call web-based decision support tool that then can be used by policymakers to organize things like surveillance, but also organize vaccination response. So I'll be showing you, of course, analysis from Kenya and Burundi, just as an example. So this is a very generic structure of the system. So what we do is we collate surveillance data from the government. And then in addition, we also obtain, this is a wrong spelling, meteorological data sets and other environmental data. That other environmental data will include things like, altitude, slope of the land, things like land use, land cover, soil types, and many other geographical features which are known to influence Rift Valley fever transmission. We then analyze those data sets to obtain risk maps. And the risk maps here could be just a still map where it doesn't move. It's just showing you the areas which are high risk and low risk. But the main focus of our work is to develop what we call dynamic maps, maps which change depending on varying temperature, rainfall, humidity levels. And those ones are really ideal for decision making because you can then use it for early warning systems. In addition to risk maps and dynamic maps, we also have another component in the decision support tool, which is a matrix. That matrix is instructions on what can be done. And this is very much built on alongside the contingency plans. So it tells you when the risk is high, what measures are you likely to be using to reduce disease incidents. So both the risk maps as well as the contingency plans are used together to support communication to the local communities. So that's that for the communication. So let me start with what we did in Kenya before we come to Burundi. In Kenya, we got surveillance data, and the red locations and also the orangish locations are places which often report cases most of the time, every 5 years, although nowadays we are seeing every 3 years, the incidence of outbreaks is going up. We have never had any reports from the western part of the country. It's usually not affected by outbreaks. So what we did is we formulated a database of those cases. And as I said earlier on, we obtained all these GIS datasets, including topography, livestock and human population, and all other things. Then we combined that dataset using the administrative zones in the country. And here we are using what we're calling sub-counties. This is the second level of administrative units. Of course, it will be ideal to present the datasets as grids in much kind of higher resolution maps. But in such a case, it's not possible because we are obtaining the data from the government, and usually the data are recorded by administration units. So that's why we are sampling everything by sub-counties. And also it will be nice to do this by a unit which the government will be able to understand and know that this is a given unit. If you give it by a grid, let's say 1 by 1 kilometer grid, it will be very tricky, very difficult to communicate to the people on the ground on where that location is. But if you say a given X sub-county, that has a much higher chance of being understood. So we did all this, including, defining the outcome by sub-county and generating what we are calling rainfall anomalies, which I'll be showing you in a short while. And this is just a way of pre-processing rainfall so that you can be able to determine periods when the rainfall levels were quite higher than expected. We did the model using a Bayesian model in R, of course, controlling for autocorrelation, and hence generated the risk map using the statistics generated from that model. So I'm just giving you this to show you how each given unit, administrative unit, we adjust for autocorrelation, which for today, I think we can skip that discussion for now and just say the model we are using is able to capture the scenarios which are happening in the neighborhood of an affected region. This is a process which is very important for RVF, and this is used for pre-processing rainfall. Because rainfall, when you use it as a raw data set, you will not capture the important signals which are needed to trigger an epidemic. So what happens is we obtain the rainfall data sets from what we call CHAPS database, which is available online. And then we estimated what we call long-term average. So the long-term average is a monthly mean estimate for the period between 1981 to the period 2005 in our case. And then for every month after 2005, we then generated what we call excess or rainfall amount, which is higher or lower than the long-term mean. And this is what we are calling the anomalies. So anything which is lower than 0 are the periods when we had droughts, and anything that's higher than 1, these are standardized estimates. Anything that's more than 0 would be considered to be periods of intense rainfall. And this graph here is 97-98, indicates the period when we had an outbreak in December 1997. And this you can see it was preceded by a period of intense rainfall of exceeding 2 months. The same case in 2006, 2007, when we had another case, and there was also an excess rainfall for the period of 2 consecutive months. The same case we saw in 2018, 2020, and recently 2014. So those just emphasizing again that we need to pre-process rainfall so that we can then get important signals which can be used to identify periods of expected high risk. So this is the model that we then generated, which combines multiple variables, including the number of wet months, which is just the count of the number of months when the rainfall exceeded 0. The slope of an area was also important, as well as the area under shrubs. So what we do is then we pick this model to be used in our online decision support tool to forecast period when we expect the risk to be higher. Let me just briefly talk about Burundi, because they also had a recent outbreak in 2022, and we were able to process the data from the time they reported the outbreak to the time when the outbreak subsided in November 2022. And we used the same approach, and we were able to get a model which indicated that there's an increase in temperature. You can see on this increase in the red dot is the period when they got an outbreak. But then a few months before the outbreak, there was an increase in temperature, and then there was a high, intense increase in rainfall. And then again, the slope, I forgot to put an E here, to show that also slope is coming up to be important as one of the geographical features for the disease. This is the matrix which I mentioned earlier on, that you need to know what actions to be taken at various phases of risk. So we can compartmentalize risk into the normal phase when there's nothing, there's no cases. Then there's a period which we call early warning, when we then forecasting and saying there's a likelihood of an outbreak. Then there's a period just before the outbreak, and then during the outbreak, and after the outbreak, there's a period called a step down, when we'll be advising communities to reduce on the intense activities they'll be doing to control the disease. For each of the risk phase, there'll be interventions that should be used, including, building capacity, enhancing communication, enhancing surveillance, implementing prevention measures, and all those, including things like research and resource mobilization. So in the tool that I'm showing you here now, I think this is my second last slide, it's an attempt to bring together all those pieces of data and information and actions in a web-based dashboard to show that there's a tab where we use for summarizing the meteorological data sets. There's a tab which we use to simulate risk and then project and say the risk is likely to occur in the coming 2 to 3 months. And then the decision support is a drop-down menu. When you click and say we are now on the outbreak phase, it gives you options of what measures you should be able to take to reduce the risk. And lastly, there's a tab which we use for communication. And this is just a summary of information that you can use to share with communities. And so I think I've just mentioned all these things in rushing, and I want to go to the concluding remarks and what we can be doing in the next steps of our work. So in short, the tool that I showed you is good for summarizing all this information and integrating data from multiple locations, including surveillance datasets from the government, GIS datasets, and generating risk. And you can do a prediction up to 3 months in advance for you to know when the period of risk would then be heightened. It can be extended to other climate-sensitive diseases, but for now, we want to perfect it for Rift Valley fever before we can introduce other things like tick-borne diseases, or even other mosquito-borne infections like lumpy skin disease and others, which then also respond to climate temperature and rainfall humidity levels. When we showed this to our stakeholders in the country here in Kenya, they asked that we need to do trainings both at the national and sub-national levels for them to understand more about ways of using the tool. But then there are some challenges which I need also to share with you. One of them is the quality of surveillance data. If surveillance officers don't record accurate information, then it means the model that will then be generating will not be accurate. So a case, for example, is when there are delays in reporting cases, then the lag period that we are making assumption for in the model will either be extended too much, so it may not be reflecting reality. So in short, what we are saying is government officers and surveillance officers, for that matter, should really work so hard to make sure that the quality of surveillance data they provide is accurate. The second major limitation is on meteorological forecasts. We know forecasts are usually very good for temperature, but for rainfall, there are major challenges with rainfall. You need to capture those deviations from the long-term average very accurately for us to then be able to capture risk. Lastly, and this is really coming back to decision makers, is Rift Valley fever is a trade-sensitive disease. And usually when you develop a tool like this, government officers may not want you to make it very open because it could be used wrongly, especially for people who import animals from your country. They may misinterpret risk. So in such a case, there should be a close collaboration between the developers of the tool and decision makers so that we are then understanding what the tool is being used for and making sure that the right people have access to that information. So let me stop there and say I'm happy to discuss with you and see what opportunities we could use this tool for Rift Valley fever in your region. So thanks, Michel.
Thank you, Bernard. Merci beaucoup, Bernard, pour cette présentation. Tu as pu résumer l'essentiel dans le temps qui a été alloué. Donc, on a quand même assez de temps pour les discussions, à peine 20 minutes comme prévu. Donc, juste pour résumer en 2 ou 3 mots. Donc, Bernard et son équipe, ils ont développé un outil d'aide à la décision pour contrôler une maladie qui est sensible au changement climatique comme la fièvre de la vallée du Rift. Ce qui est important à retenir, c'est que ils ont pu... Vous pouvez mettre en mode muet. Babacar, en mode muet. OK. Donc, ils ont pu faire une association entre l'augmentation de la température, l'augmentation de la pluviométrie et les pentes du relief avec l'émergence de la maladie. C'est-à-dire qu'à chaque fois, l'émergence de la maladie est précédée par une augmentation de la pluviométrie, une augmentation de la température et puis une pente élevée. Donc ça, c'est important. Et ceci s'est répercuté sur plusieurs années. Donc, ce qui aide à avoir une prévision plus ou moins précise pour l'émergence. L'autre chose, c'est que tout cela ne peut être possible que si on a des données de qualité de surveillance, c'est-à-dire que les services vétérinaires puissent détenir des données fiables et claires de la surveillance de ces maladies comme la fièvre de la vallée du Rift. Et aussi qu'il y ait une discussion entre les chercheurs et les décideurs politiques pour que ces outils puissent être utilisés à bon escient. Parce que comme c'est une maladie qui est sensible au commerce, c'est-à-dire qu'un troupeau qui est infecté de cette maladie ne peut pas être vendu à l'extérieur du pays. Donc, le pays n'aura pas l'autorisation du marché pour vendre ces animaux. Donc, il y aura certainement un conflit entre peut-être ce que les décideurs politiques veulent et puis le risque de la maladie. Donc, il faut une discussion pour que ces outils-là puissent être utilisés à bon escient. Donc, ça, c'est un autre challenge. Donc, je pense qu'il y a eu une traduction en français au même moment. Vous avez certainement tout compris. Donc, on va ouvrir des discussions. Donc, vous allez juste lever la main. On va prendre quelques questions, peut-être 2 ou 3 questions. Ensuite, il va répondre. On a à peine 17 minutes, donc on va utiliser ce temps-là pour les questions. OK, merci. Donc, la balle est dans votre camp, les participants. Si vous avez des questions, on va les prendre.
We have James Anson.
James? Okay, go ahead, James.
Thank you, Bernard. This is very interesting. You mentioned that the rainfall forecasts are a constraint. I wonder if you could clarify a little bit the lead time of the forecast. Meteorological services offer forecasts at a weather time scale of a few days out to maybe 1 to 1.5 weeks. They also, I'm asked to confirm my language. They also offer seasonal forecasts with lead times of 3 to 4 months. And all of the, well, several meteorological services, including Kenya, internally have the capability of providing downscaled forecasts at a seasonal lead time on a 4-kilometer grid. They also have access to gridded rainfall data sets, national gridded rainfall data sets that are higher quality than CHIRP's. But the forecasts at a seasonal timescale are inherently probabilistic. So I'd like you to comment on and clarify the time scale, the lead time of the forecasts that are of interest, and also whether you have a framework for dealing with probabilities in those forecasts. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. Should I wait for another question, or we answer one by one, Michelle?
Do you have another hand up? I can't see all the participants. I think you can go ahead as we wait for another hand. Yeah. Go ahead,
Yes.
Bernard. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, James, I think you captured one of the struggles that we have is we are more used to using monthly processed rainfall. You said, you know, the meteorological stations like the one we have in Kenya have forecasts based on probabilistic forecasts. And I think maybe that will be the next step that we want to work with, because that would require some prior to be fed into the models that we have currently, because we usually the good thing with the CHAPS rainfall is you just download and use it directly. It's not probabilistic, it's estimates which have been provided. But of course, we know it doesn't really give you any forecasts. Usually for the disease, you require something like 2 to 3 months for the government to prepare and maybe procure vaccines or even provide communication. So even if, so that means we can go the route you are proposing, that we should use these forecasts, basically going for the 3 monthly seasonal forecasts, which you say that they are available. So we are keen to see how that can be incorporated into the current analysis, so that we can then bypass or overcome this challenge that we are facing currently of the very short lead time.
Okay, merci Bernard. Hadi Khan.
Bonjour tout le monde. Merci beaucoup Bernard pour la qualité de la présentation de l'outil qui permet vraiment de renforcer tout ce qui est surveillance des maladies au niveau national, mais aussi d'un pays à un autre. Cet outil serait vraiment d'une importance capitale pour la prise de décision, et ça permet au pays de mieux surveiller tout ce qui est santé animale. Maintenant, j'ai une question par rapport aux prévisions de 3 mois sur les maladies que vous dites. Est-ce que ça concerne tous les maladies animales, ou bien il y a un certain nombre de maladies? Parce que vous parlez on peut prévenir sur 3 mois le risque de survenue des maladies. Quel type de maladie? Ou bien c'est tous les maladies, ou bien il y a des maladies qui ont été ciblées? Je vous remercie.
Ok, on va prendre Samba Sow. et puis il va combiner les deux questions. Samba?
Hello, thank you for the presentation. Can you hear me? Hello?
Yes, can hear you.
Thank you for this presentation. Just I have two questions, and the first one, just would like to know who is like the target or the end user of these tools that has been like developed, and that's the first one. And the second one, like I am from Senegal and mainly from the north, and most of the time what I realize, if the animals or the livestock during the dry season, they go their first time in the furlough and they come back during the wet season, like during the rain season, like in the north one, like I can say in the region of Podor or Linguère, then most of them, like we face some animals that died. And I really don't know the reason, if it is related to this, but what we noticed every time, like the animals pass their first time in the furlough during the dry season, and then during the rain season they go back to like to the, let's say, in the Jollof or the north part of Podor. Then we had some animals that died, and really, if you can enlighten us on that matter. Probably it's not part of the chapter subject, but it's just something that I want to understand. Thanks.
Should we add one more question before you respond, Bernard? Okay, Aruna Abarchi, allez-y, vite. Vous êtes en mode muet. Votre micro est fermé. Aruna, votre micro est fermé. Ok, allez-y. Je ne vous entends pas, Aruna, je ne vous entends pas. Ok. Aruna a certainement un problème de micro. On va prendre Papa Ndiamedia. Papa Ndiamedia, allez-y. Oui.
Bonjour tout le monde et merci pour la présentation. Moi, j'ai juste deux questions à corriger. Par rapport à ce sujet. Donc, je voudrais savoir quels sont les impacts spécifiques des changements climatiques sur les systèmes pastoraux. Sécheresse, variabilité des précipitations, dégradation des pâturages. Et ma deuxième question est comment les éleveurs perçoivent-ils ces changements et quelles stratégies d'adaptation traditionnelles utilisent-ils déjà? Et merci beaucoup.
OK, on a eu 3 questions. On donne le temps à Bernard de répondre et puis on va aller aux autres questions. Bernard, you can go ahead. We had from Hadikan, Samboso, and Papa Ndiamedia. If you have problem understanding the question, you let me know.
Yes, I think there were 2 French questions which you can clarify.
Okay, so the first one was from Hadikan. She was asking if the 3-month forecast on disease intervention, like you say that you should be planning 3 months ahead. So she's asking if it is just for river valley fever or any disease else you have considered here in this case. And for Samboso, he was asking what are the end users, the target for this tool. And also he said that there's a scenario in Senegal where some period of the year when the animals move, transume, it was associated with some death, some mortality of the animals. And that is a recurrent scenario. So he wanted to find out if you have some insight on that. Yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah. Yeah. So the 3 months is what we have seen for Rift because usually it requires some high level of vaccination for for the disease to be controlled. The other thing is, the disease occurs in regions which, when they get flooded, it will not be possible for you to reach there. So there could be issues of accessibility, even motorability of those areas. So it's good to plan quite early in advance. For other diseases which occur in high potential areas or even highlands, you may still access them even when rains have come up so much. But for Rift Valley fever, because it's usually found in flat areas and mainly in pastoral locations, once rainfall has become too much, it will be very difficult to reach populations. So yes, I think generally you need more time to prepare for all the diseases, but I think for Rift, you can consider it to be much more, it requires much more early response. The audience, or the people we are developing this, is mainly for policymakers and surveillance officers, and at the national level and also at sub-national level, because I didn't really present you the tool itself to show how you can play around. It has drop-down menus where you can specifically ask the risk of a given county or sub-county. So meaning people in the rural areas can also monitor their own conditions within their own small geographical locations. So it's mainly for national and sub-national officers who manage surveillance, they manage biosecurity, they manage communication, as well as vaccine deployment. So I think those are the two questions which you... Oh, yeah. For the other question on mortalities of animals, that's another indirect effect of climate variability, where because of all these movements and congregation of animals in some given locations, many other diseases could come up. And so it's difficult really to say it's rifts or any other disease. But I think going forward, we are planning to do more work in Senegal, and we will be happy to discuss and see what could be the causes of all those other deaths that you are seeing.
Okay, they also the third one from Papa Njameja. What are it's a bit of a broader question. What are the impact of climate change on pasture? Mm-hmm. What are the perception of communities on climate change, and how do they adapt to climate change? It's a bit broad, but you can give some points here quickly. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
No, so you are right. I think climate change has much more broader impacts on not just on rift, but also on many other diseases. And the tool we are developing is very much targeted to one component of the measures that we need to be doing. But of course, as you know, with climate change, even access to forages, access to water will be affected. And that has an impact on animal health, because you will have to move animals much wider and much frequently to get those resources. And the other complex thing that also we are fearing for is climate change will not just affect one disease at a time. It affects multiple diseases, ticks, flies, mosquitoes at the same time. And so it might come to a point whereby the burden of multiple diseases will increase, because climate affects many things at the same time. And so you really need to be sensitizing our policymakers to think broadly. Instead of focusing on one disease at a time, we think broadly on what adaptations measures we need to be putting in place. Things like improving surveillance will be the first one. Things like at least making sure that our animals are healthy. We observe the routine vaccination procedures that are available, so that you have healthy animals which are better able to resist those impacts. Things like also, stocking rates should also be looked at in terms of making sure that our ecology can sustain an optimal number of animals. Because what we see in East Africa is because of overgrazing, high population densities, the impacts of climate change will be much more. than if you are really able to put in proper management procedures. So I think we can go on and on and on climate change. I think we can have another forum to discuss that.
Yeah.
For today, this is really one of the tools which we could use for managing those.
Sure. OK, let's take on prend la dernière question. Arona, si tu es à mesure de parler de manière claire, on va vous prendre. Il faut ouvrir votre micro d'abord et vous parler. Votre micro est fermé.
Parlez de moi.
Oui, allez-y, on vous entend parfaitement, oui.
Voilà, merci beaucoup. Donc, je disais merci vraiment pour cette présentation. Et là, je félicite le présentateur. Moi, je pense que pour ce qui concerne le Niger et surtout le Sahel central, il va falloir peut-être mûrir plus de stratégies de mon point de vue. Parce que non seulement pour le Niger, ce pays fait partie des pays où en tout cas la maladie n'a pas duré, elle n'a pas apparu depuis très longtemps, contrairement aux autres pays. Donc, pas trop maîtrisée par les éleveurs, donc certains acteurs. Et en plus, il y a aussi l'insécurité qui caractérise ces zones-là aujourd'hui. Donc, il peut y avoir en tout cas une limite quant à l'efficacité de la surveillance. C'est pour ça que je pense que ce qu'il faut faire, c'est surtout réfléchir sur comment impliquer ces éleveurs-là. Parce qu'ils sont dans ces zones-là, même si les services techniques ont des difficultés à aller là-bas pour raison d'insécurité ou autre, eux, ils sont là-bas, comment les impliquer davantage et de mon point de vue, à partir des structures organisées, comme les associations d'éleveurs, comme autre chose, comment réfléchir à ça? Parce que c'est aussi ça. Quelqu'un l'a dit dans une de ses interventions, effectivement, quand il y a ce genre de maladie, ça impacte aussi le commerce. Maintenant, comment vraiment sensibiliser les gens pour savoir, en tout cas, prioriser surtout l'aspect sanitaire, santé, après le revenu, quoi, voilà, je veux dire. Donc, c'est vraiment un appel que je lance parce que moi, c'est un plaidoyer sur lequel je suis depuis très longtemps avec l'OMS, mais ça n'arrive pas à mordre, ça n'arrive vraiment pas à mordre. Dieu merci maintenant, avec la santé unique, ça peut aller de mon point de vue. Seulement, c'est contextualiser l'aspect insécurité, maladie non maîtrisée, comment faire pour en tout cas garantir une surveillance véritable. Voilà ce que je voulais dire. Merci beaucoup.
Merci, Arona. Bernard, it's more a comment contribution than a question. So he's from Niger, and he said that the scenario might not be the same because in Niger, they have not seen the disease for many, many years. So we need to know why. And also issues around insecurity. So we should involve farmers in the decision-making tool so that they can also own this and then also contribute because they are the one in the Sahel that who have the information because we have poor surveillance system to reach these animals and then to collect information. I will just also mention something to him in French, maybe you know. On est en train de réfléchir comment ce type d'outil peut être utilisé aussi au niveau régional. On sait qu'en Afrique de l'Ouest, les animaux bougent de pays en pays. Et comment ces types d'outils peuvent être utilisés pour informer toute une région, peut-être tout un système de production, au lieu de se focaliser juste sur un pays. Donc, on est aussi en discussion sur ça. Et je pense que ça peut être vraiment intéressant de voir les aspects transfrontaliers. On a beaucoup de problèmes de maladies transfrontalières et de mouvements. Et ça rejoint ce que vous avez dit entre le Niger, le Mali, le Sénégal, la Mauritanie. Donc, c'est en discussion. Donc, sur ce, je vais remercier Bernard Bett. On va prendre une pause de juste 2-3 minutes, le temps de connecter le prochain présentateur. Bernard, thank you. We'll follow up on this. I'm sure the AICCRA team will follow up on this, and then we'll see what is the next step from here. Thank you for sharing this beautiful information with us, and then wish you all the best. Thank you. You are free to stay to watch Jacob. Yeah, to hear from Jacob. Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
Bye. Okay, Lamine, la main à toi.
Let's go. Oui, merci beaucoup Michel, docteur Michel. Merci beaucoup Bernard. Je crois que ce fut quand même, en tout cas, 45 bonnes minutes où il y a eu quand même des échanges extraordinaires, des questions pertinentes relevées. Et j'avoue que, en tout cas, nous ne sommes pas surpris de la qualité vraiment donc, des participants qui sont là, mais aussi de la présentation. Et nous osons espérer quand même que nous allons continuer, n'est-ce pas, donc les échanges, voilà, donc pour relever les défis qui nous concernent tous. Nous allons maintenant passer la parole à notre docteur, donc notre chercheur de Hillary, qui va nous faire une présentation sur un outil aussi important également, qui s'adresse surtout donc au monde agricole. Nous allons, je ne sais pas s'il est prêt, il va aussi faire sa présentation en anglais, avec toujours donc la traduction simultanée en français. Voilà, il pourrait peut-être se présenter ou bien redonner encore la parole à
Michel
qui le présente. Voilà, ensuite lui donner la parole pour continuer ou commencer la présentation. Merci encore une fois.
Merci Lamine. On va passer à la deuxième présentation qui va prendre à peu près la même durée. Donc, on va passer des maladies au système de nutrition, système fourrager. Sans doute, vous savez que l'alimentation représente 80% de l'investissement dans la production du bétail. Et dans notre région du Sahel, on sait que l'alimentation est le premier défi des éleveurs. Et un animal bien alimenté a moins de chances d'être malade. Donc, cet outil-là, iSAT, sera un outil qui va aider à la gestion de la production de fourrage. Donc, Jacob Emmanuel Joseph, il est agro-météorologue à l'Institut international de recherche sur l'élevage. Il est basé en Tanzanie. Donc, il s'engage auprès des petits exploitants agricoles d'Afrique de l'Est et de l'Ouest, les aidant à traduire les prévisions météorologiques en informations pertinentes pour gérer les risques climatiques dans leur production. Le travail de Jacob est fortement appuyé sur des modèles pour développer des prévisions météorologiques et des connaissances d'experts pour concevoir et diffuser des produits et des services d'information climatique qui améliorent l'agriculture résiliente au climat. Donc, comme je l'ai dit, Jacob est basé en Tanzanie. Donc, on va l'engager pour 45 minutes. Jacob, the ball is on your side. Merci. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. And I'm very honored and pleased for you having me here. Today, actually, basically what I'm going to talk about a decision support tool that you can, you may think of some example of decision support tool that you have, come across within your area. But this is the decision support tool that we implemented in Senegal. And actually, we implemented in crop growers from 2022 to 2024 season. And we got some very good results that I'm going to present to you today. And what we are thinking now is to expand it into the forage crop production. So, and that's the plan for this year. So I'm going to take you through some motivations and introduction and the motivation. And we'll talk a little bit, to expand a little bit of where Bernard has talked a little about, and that's about climate informations and climate change, how they impact productivity in our livestock, in crop and livestock system. And then just to give you a bit of flavor, I'll show a case study of this decision support tool that I'm going to talk about. And also then we'll delve into how we are going to adapt this into forage system and then give some conclusions and recommendation. Well, I know that the webinar is bilingual, so I'll try to be as slower as I can, so but on time, so that we can, we can make the most of it. Well, let's talk a little bit about forage production, especially in West Africa. as in every part of Africa, forage production in West Africa is very core to economics, and not only economic, but to the whole livestock system. Studies have shown that forage production, actually livestock account for 44% of agricultural GDP. So livestock production is very important and key to the economy. That 44% is very big. And therefore, when you talk about when you talk about forage production, you directly impact livestock system. And if you impact the livestock system, you also impact the livelihood of people in West African countries, including Senegal. And not only that, but also you impact their economy. That's what this statement means. You may agree with me that livestock provide for us meat, milk, draft power, as well as manure, which give us nutrients to the soil that we do cultivation. And therefore, livestock, they are key to food security in our household. Well, but when we talk a little bit about climate variability and change, it's trivial that climate variability and change actually intensify some of the existing challenges. We have a lot of challenges in crop livestock system, things like financial challenge, land degradation, and other challenges. But when all of these are then hampered by climate variability, then the things become even much worse. So talking about climate variability here, we talk things like erratic rainfall, when we have period of prolonged droughts and also rising temperature. All these affect significantly crop productivity, crop production, and livestock production together. So going to forage, as I said, they affect the crop productivity. Also, the forage availability become even much worse when we have erratic rain, prolonged droughts, and also rising temperature. Together with this, the climate variability is also associated to things like soil degradation and also demographic pressure, changes in the demographic pressure. All these factors actually lead to a very, they all significantly affect the pasture land quality. Well, so with these challenges, then we have to rethink about how we produce our forage in West Africa. Since we have seen that forage production is very important for forage production is very important for livestock productivity, and also it accounts both the economy and the GDP, the livelihood of West African farmers, and therefore we have to rethink of how we are going to tackle these challenges. Studies have shown that there are a lot of traditional forage crops. For example, one study that I have been reading recently has identified that there are more than 488 species. This is about 500, almost 500 species. But the use of this forage species is very, very limited due to the challenges that I have mentioned. So you see that we have to think a little bit, we have to think critically, how are we going to combat these challenges so that we can make a good use of these species that are available. Because you may ask a reason why, because all of these, they have a significant role in the production of livestock. So for a cow to eat a particular kind of species, forage species, is advantages compared to other species. So we have to utilize this. Limitation in utilization of this then limit also the productivity. So you have to utilize these and exploit them effectively so that we can increase our activity. But what we see in West Africa is in other African countries, monoculture system still dominate. And since it still dominates, then it limits even the cultivation of these forage species, and therefore it limits resilience as well. But some farmers, they have not integrated well some agroecological practices which enhance, improve their soil health as well as forage yields. As things like intercropping. I see there another presentation, I don't know. Okay.
Est-ce que vous pouvez fermer vos micros, s'il vous plaît?
Yeah, thank you very much.
Go ahead.
Well, so what I was explaining is that, yeah, some farmers have not well integrated things like agroecological approaches. We are talking, giving example like intercropping legumes together with grasses. These have been found to be beneficial to improve soil and also forage yields. These are the things that have not been integrated well. However, the research shows that, yeah, they are beneficial and they can improve both soil health and also the forage availability. Well, talking about in terms of climate, yeah, so that was in terms of the system. But when you talk about in terms of climate, yeah, there is a need. There is studies show that there's a need of having climate-informed decision making, and these actually they will improve things like climate-smart agriculture practice, which we all know that they enhance the forage production and also resilience. Well, we are in the digital era right now, and therefore farmers having access to mobile phone devices, for example, that's a very good opportunity for utilization of digital tools such as for mobile phones, applications, etc., and also even the web-based application that the previous presenter has shown. So we believe that having these, they can provide a real-time advisory to farmers, not only farmers, but also breeders, so that they can have information that are well aligned to what is going on in terms of climate and have climate-informed decision making. Well, talking about, again, just to summarize, thinking about if you want to rethink the forage production in West Africa, or in any other African country, then we have to think of how are we going to combine the traditional practice that we have with the tools that are available over there, the methods starting from agroecological practices, as well as having some resilient system that is intercropping, etc. And also the other important aspect that we have to consider is how we make a decision, because climate variability is a challenge. Therefore, we have to utilize the available resources to make climate-informed decision. As you can see, these one are all related to the farming system. But so breeders will be asking, what actually do we have role to play in this? If we have climate-informed, if we have climate information, then this is very important for breeders, because what breeders can do in terms of forage production with climate information, we believe that they can, yes, design or develop some sort of adaptive breeding strategies. So them understanding what are the critical period of drought, the critical period of heat, then this one is a good information for them to design and develop drought tolerant and heat resistant forage varieties, for example. But as well, we need some integrated approach in order to, yes, we need some integrated approach in order to, yes, well, address this problem, like having the climate projection in the picture together with genetic mapping. This can improve or can help the breeders to define the selection of the traits that they are using in their breeding program. If we successfully do this, then we can improve or rationalize the breeding. And since we have done that, then we can reduce significantly yield fluctuation, which can worsen livestock feed shortage. So you can see that this is a whole scenario. I mean, this is a whole package that we need for both farmers and breeders to come to a point where we have resilience system, and not only that, but also a productive system as well. Well, so let me just recapture very quickly with some, yes, I have shown that we need climate information service for both breeders and farmers, but in African countries, there are still a number of gaps that exist when coming to climate information services. I have chosen to highlight these three. Number one, which is localized climate information. So by localized climate information here, I mean information that are closer to your needs. Yeah, most of the information we get from Med Service, for example, they are of coarse resolution. So they are of, low resolution information, which sometimes are not beneficial. They are not benefiting the farmers who are doing decision. The nature of the seasonal climate forecast as well that we are getting from Met Service, most of the time they are probabilistic, and this one are not well understood to the farmers, and thus there is underutilization of the same. But also in our production environment, we don't have those farmer-centric climate-informed agro-advisory tool that cater the needs of the farmer at a particular time when the farmer need it. And this also is one of the most, of the biggest challenge that we are still facing, and has caused a lot of, climate information services out of there to be obsolete or even of no use. So let's dive to the case study of what we have done in Senegal. Actually, I'll show you how we somehow addressed these challenges, the gaps, and come and managed to form or to create and disseminate a climate-informed advisory, which were more farmer-centric, with a tool called iSAT. Yeah, I'll try to summarize a little bit about what iSAT means. Actually, this is a tool that started since 2016 in India. It started as a sowing app, a sowing application, or an app that gives sowing advisory to a farmer. But later on, we then further developed it into a tool called Intelligent Agricultural System Advisory Tool. And what actually this tool does, it co-designed the advisor with farmers and experts. And this co-designing is meant to provide crop and location-specific climate-informed agro-advisory. So in Senegal, we designed this, and then we evaluated the usefulness of this tool in farmers' decision-making. And here I'm talking about the pre-season planning and the in-season planning. So the pre-season planning, you can think of all those planning that a farmer does before the beginning of the season, and the in-season management are those which a farmer do during the season. The season has started already. And then we assess the impact of this tool for farm productivity together with profitability and also resource management. Just to take you quickly of how the framework is, this is the framework of iSAT. These are the inputs. It takes different inputs starting from weather data, soil condition, and all these, put them into a crop model, simulates, and after having a simulation output, this is being refined by expert and ground truth knowledge in order to develop location-specific decision rules, which are later on developed to localize messages which are sent to the farmers. Just an example of pre-season decision tree. You can see this guide the pre-season planning. So what kind of crop you must choose for the coming season. So that's why to take the seasonal climate forecast, this is the forecast for 3 months, and 3 months and more. And then this one's just some sort of data analytics to improve or simply to add value to the seasonal climate forecast here. And then this later on, as I showed in the framework, is developed into decision trees, and decision tree are sent as a message to farmers. These are the messages that are being sent to our farmers in a particular village before the season. And during the season, the logic is the same. So instead of taking the seasonal climate forecast, it's taking like 2-week forecast, 1 week to 2 weeks forecast, and the same is being done. And the various messages are developed and sent to the farmers at a specific village. So example of a message here would be a good time for doing weeding or a good time for doing fertilizer, because the rainfall condition are X, Y, and Z. So you have to do fertilizer. The best time of doing fertilizer application is A, B, C. Well, this is how we implemented this tool. I mean, in 2022, 2023, those are the locations that we implemented. We partnered with ICT company called Jokalante, and we're able to disseminate this advisory at least to 2,700 farmers they elect in 2022, 2023. And also their system was very good, and it enables us to get feedback from farmer. We collected this and we refined the system as we went on the season. So these are the key results that we got. At least 80% of the user rated the tool as useful, and and also the users found that there was at least a 24% reduction in both input and labor cost per hectare. As you can see from this figure, this is how they rated. Actually, you can see a lot of farmers say that it was providing useful, very reliable information, help them to make decision, choose the right crop, etc. And in terms of productivity, we found that the farmer with this tool were able to see, were able to increase their yield, for example, for pear millet up to 41% and the groundnut up to 21%, as it can be shown here. So the next step, we want to adapt this not only in the crops that I've mentioned here. We worked with groundnut, millet, cowpea, and maize. However, I'm showing only this for now. But now we want to adapt the same tool to forage crops. And what actually that means, this means that we must have a new area where we target a new area called double region. And here we'll have at least 12 to 16 villages in the coming season. And we use the same protocol. We create a collaborative ecosystem that will be sustainable in this season and the season to come. And actually, for your information, we have already started to do some preliminary work since April to May. And we hope by end of May or early June, we'll be able to send pre-season advisory to the forage, in line with forage crop production to agro-pasture in this region. Well, so this is what we're expecting if we successfully implement this. Yes, we'll have some timely decisions and the timely and localized advisory will optimize the feed decision, and thus will have optimized the planting of the forage crops and also some grazing schedule, which later on will help to reduce, or simply will mitigate the risk and also increase the stability of the system. And how this will come about, if we have good decision, it's obvious that we'll increase production. And if we increase production, then we reduce the feed or forage shortage, and thus we improve livestock nutrition, which later on will be important for farm resilience. Well, for the breeders, then, through the process, the breeders will learn actually how the system works and what kind of decision the farmers are doing, and actually what is important in their breeding program. This can develop or simply can accelerate the breeding programs of drought resistance, for example, drought and heat resistant forage varieties, because they have a good understanding of how the local conditions work. Well, so this is the digital tool, and therefore we believe that yes, having this tool in place, actually we do the tool will do the digital empowerment as well for the users, which simply means, some complex data analytics that cannot be understood to a farmer can be well understood because of this personalized or simply localized tool, which give only important information to what a farmer needs actually. So in conclusion, yes, if we operationalize the farm-centric tools such as iSAT in a breeding program, this is true that it's going to boost the forage production. Studies that have been conducted in various parts of the globe, India, Senegal, and Tanzania, have shown that inclusion of climate-informed advisory is not only beneficial to agro-pastoralists, but also to breeders in their program. And therefore, if we have decision-making that are based on climate, it's obvious that we hope that we are going to increase the yield stability, improve the livestock nutrition and resilience of the farming system. So now the focus will be in capacitating the users of this tool, farmers, policy makers, breeders, etc., and also encourage the technological innovation to drive the long-term impact. So yeah, for anyone who is willing to collaborate in this continuum, you are very, very welcome. Thank you very much for listening.
Many thanks, Jacob, for this. Merci, Jacob, pour cette présentation très intéressante. Le AI Tool, Intelligent Agricultural Advisory Tool, est un outil centré sur l'éleveur pour la prise de décision pour la production du fourrage. Donc, avant le semis, après le semis, donc quel type d'informations dont l'éleveur a besoin pour prendre des décisions et anticiper la malnutrition probable des animaux dans les moments de soudure ou bien pendant les périodes de changement climatique et tout ça. Donc, ce qu'on retient ici, c'est que cet outil est en train d'être testé au Sénégal et dans d'autres pays. Et les résultats préliminaires ont montré que l'outil a été très bénéfique pour les éleveurs et a aidé aussi à augmenter la production du fourrage, donc certainement à améliorer la nutrition des animaux. Donc, on va prendre des questions. On a à peu près 15 minutes. On va prendre des questions comme on l'a fait précédemment. Et puis, jusqu'à 3 questions d'un coup, et puis il va répondre. Ouais, donc c'est ça. Donc, la main est à vous, les participants. Donc, je vais changer mon... ouais. OK, je vois 2 mains. Je ne sais pas si mes collègues voient beaucoup plus que ça. OK, la première question, c'est Papa... OK, je vois. OK, Papa Amadou, allez-y. Vous pouvez ouvrir votre micro et vous parler. Papa Amadou Mokhtar. Sinon, en attendant, on prend Aruna, s'il est prêt.
Voilà, merci beaucoup.
Oui, allez-y.
Comme vous le savez, le Sahel, en tout cas, a comme grand défi, surtout l'alimentation animale. Ça, c'est clair. Maintenant, j'ai bien compris par rapport à cette culture fourragère. Maintenant, je voudrais savoir, est-ce que cet outil prévoit un peu le temps de sécheresse pour prévenir peut-être les stress végétaux qui peuvent arriver? Est-ce que ça prévoit, on peut savoir peut-être de telle période à telle période, il ne peut pas avoir de la pluie? Ça, c'est un. Et maintenant, est-ce que si il y a des cultures peut-être qui se font hors saison pluvieuse, et là aussi, quelle est la stratégie? C'est l'irrigation goutte à goutte. En fait, c'est quoi? Je voudrais bien savoir. Parce que, comme je l'ai dit, nous, ça nous intéresse beaucoup vraiment de tenir compte, en tout cas, des changements climatiques dans la production fourragère. Et je voudrais bien comprendre comment ça se passe. Merci beaucoup.
Merci, Aaron. Papa Amadou?
Oui, merci beaucoup pour la parole donnée et merci pour la clarté de la présentation. Bon, mon intervention porte sur les cultures fourragères. La réussite des cultures fourragères dépend étroitement des coûts de production, mais aussi de la valorisation dans l'alimentation du bétail. Alors, ma question est, pensez-vous, dans l'avenir, inclure les coûts de production et la rentabilité économique dans votre système? Autrement dit, culture fourragère, oui, mais dans quel système de production? Je vous remercie.
Merci, Papa Amadou. Y a-t-il une autre main? OK, je ne vois pas d'autres mains pour le moment. Donc, on va permettre à Jacob de répondre à ces deux questions en attendant que les autres réfléchissent. Jacob, did you catch the two questions? Or do you need help?
No, I need help.
Okay, so the first one from Arona is asking if your tool took in account the drought duration, the duration of a drought, and if also the stress tolerant crop or forage, okay, how have you considered those? And then in case of irrigation, like a production of forage based on irrigation, when there is no rain, so what is also the touch in there? How can you manage that? And from Papa Amadou, he's asking if you have incorporated some economic analysis of forage production, taking into account the cost of the input in the system, and which type of system is adapted for this type of tool, if there is some specific system for the tool, or how is it? Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much for very, very nice question. Yeah, first of all, let me say that in the past years, 2022 to 2024, iSAT has been interacting with solely crop growers and not forage. Okay, it's not, so all the intervention that we did, it was in crop production and not forage production, not specifically for forage production. However, some crops like what you have seen, groundnut and cowpea, they can be, it's a good, they were a good source for grain and also fodder, as you understand. Some of these are dual purpose, right? Yeah, so for now, I mean, in 2025, we want to produce agro-advisory specifically for forage crops. I don't know if that makes sense. For 2025, we want to, yes, develop and disseminate advisory that are specifically for forage crops. And why this is important? Yes, if you're talking about grain production in maize, or you're talking about grain production in groundnut, for example, yes. And at the other hand, you're talking about forage production for the same crops. Yes, there are similarities, but there are still some differences that you have to consider. For example, now I'll go to the third question, talking about irrigation. In the past 3 years, we were working in rain-fed system. Yes, we understand that. So there were nothing like irrigation at all. But if you're going to work with forage crop, then we have to consider that adding some irrigation components in our model, so that we can also address those kind of issues. And yes, we have capability of doing this because we are using the process-based crop model, which are very useful to help to design those kind of agro-advisory. Talking about the drought and the drought duration, drought and drought duration, those are very, very, very important and key to any agriculture system, which is rain-fed, for example, in Senegal. And where particularly we worked, it was very important. And how we incorporated this information, because as I showed you, we had two kind of forecast. So we had the seasonal climate forecast for the entire season, and also we had a weekly forecast and bi-weekly forecast for a shorter duration of time. So this one, they help us to identify when we have a period of when we have a longer period of dry spell, and what kind of management that a farmer can do in order to escape or simply minimize the risk at that particular point. So the answer here is yes. The drought, the dry spells and the drought were taken into account, and the same thing that we are going to do for forage crops as well for this year. if you read the, talking about the economic analysis, yes, we did some sort of cost-benefit analysis. And yeah, they were not very advanced, but at least we found that for example, the slide that I'm showing here, you see, for that, for those analysis, we are able to conclude that yes, for the farmers who were using the agro-advisory from our system, we're able to reduce the cost of input and labor up to 24%. So yes, we incorporated a cost-benefit analysis, and this is the same thing that we are going to do also for forage crops. We understand that forage is not only production of the forage, but it is a business. So we must incorporate that component, and it's very important. So that point is taken, and thank you very much for highlighting it. Yes. You are muted, Michel.
Oh, sorry. Donc, je disais qu'on va prendre encore une ou deux questions. Ousmane Sarr, ensuite, il y avait une main de AICCRA Sénégal, si elle est toujours là. On commence par Ousmane.
Donc, bonjour, bonjour et merci pour la présentation, pour le partage de ces outils en fait, qui sont proposés aux producteurs et aux éleveurs. Moi, ma question tourne autour de la présentation qui est faite par rapport aux outils qui sont utilisés. iSAT étant un outil d'aide à la décision, j'ai vu dans les diapos qu'ils ont proposé l'affichage d'un arbre à décision. Donc, l'arbre à décision, c'est surtout pour un peu jouer sur la mise à l'échelle de la technologie ou bien de mise à l'échelle de l'information. Et dans la finalité de cet arbre à décision, nous avons vu qu'il y a un ensemble de messages qui va être envoyé aux producteurs ou aux éleveurs. Mais ma question est de savoir quel type de message va être envoyé aux producteurs. Est-ce que c'est des messages dans la langue locale du producteur, ou bien est-ce que c'est des messages qui vont être écrits en SMS, etc. Parce que si n'oublions pas qu'en milieu rural, les producteurs, la plupart des producteurs ou des éleveurs sont des analphabètes. Donc, il y a des difficultés pour lire des messages, etc. Est-ce que le message qui est envoyé via l'outil qui est l'arbre à décision, c'est des messages qui sont envoyés suivant la langue du producteur? Et vraiment, merci pour toute cette présentation, pour ce partage-là. Nous, en tant que producteurs, ça nous va droit au cœur. Et puis, voilà, c'est la question que j'avais à poser. Merci beaucoup.
Excellent, Moussa. Oumar. Donc, AICCRA Sénégal?
Oui, AICCRA Sénégal n'a pas une question spécifique. C'est juste pour rebondir sur une question qui a été posée dans le chat box. Jacob, I would like to invite you to activate the option of interpretation, please. Yeah, and the question is concern the degree of involvement of women and young people in the implementation of these tools. That the implementation of these tools take account.
Okay, merci.
Yeah, account
merci,
of the fact
Lamy.
that women and young women farmers are even more exposed to the consequences of climate change.
OK. Merci, Lamine. On prend une dernière question et puis Jacob va répondre. De Idrissa Tawadogo. Idrissa, allez-y.
Allô, vous m'entendez?
Oui.
OK, merci pour cette belle initiative. Les cultures fourragères sont également, bon, je dis que les cultures fourragères sont vraiment une alternative pour pallier le manque de fourrage, surtout en saison sèche, qui est la période la plus longue. Maintenant, ma question porte sur l'outil que vous utilisez pour les cultures fourragères. Est-ce que cet outil peut être utilisé pour appliquer au niveau des pâturages naturels, pour dire le fourrage qui n'est pas cultivé?
OK. OK, merci beaucoup. Jacob, we have 3 questions, right? The first one is, what will be the form of the message to the end user? Will that be oral, SMS, and have you taken into account the language? The second one is about the implication of women. in this tool. And the third one is if this tool can be applied to natural pasture, not cultivated forest, to natural pasture, if it is possible. Yeah. So we have 2 minutes to 5 minutes to respond to this.
Thank you very much. Am I still audible? Yeah. So thank you very much for the question. Again, they are very, very good questions. Yeah, talking about, let me start directly with women and yeah, so the tools actually disseminate advisories to household. Right? The one, yeah, for those past 3 years, we didn't have specific advisory for women, but it just disseminated our advisory to household, and then the household can think of, the head of household or someone who make a decision to the household can think of how is going to use that. But for this year, yeah, that's a very good translation. That's very good suggestion. I'm trying to work with, sorry, I'm trying to work with this translation. Yeah, so that's a very good suggestion, and we can think of rating it, but it's after we have seen the need for the farmers that will be working, because the first stage for iSAT, which distinguish it from other tools, the first thing that we do is doing the need assessment. So we collaborate much with farmers during, by means of focus group discussions and individual interviews to understand how their system works. And that's why iSAT is able to develop and disseminate localized information, context-specific information, because of that much interaction with farmers. So if you're going to these new areas and see that, yes, there is a need for producing specific information for women, then we can do that. Yeah, but thank you very much for that suggestion. And the second one was about the dissemination channel. Again, it's the same. Yes, it's the same answer for the farmers that we worked in the past 3 years. We find the interactive voice response. Yeah, but depending on the needs, again, we can extend that to smartphone application, SMS, even radio program as well. So that depends on the needs and what actually work for a particular audience. The information channel will depend on the needs of the farmer. Talking about the local language, all the advisory was sent using local language. So Jukalante had that capability of translating the message from from English to French to local language like Kula and Wolof, for example. So depending on the area where the message was disseminated, the advisory were translated to that specific area to cover, to the language of that specific area, local language of that specific area. Thanks.
The last one about the natural pastures. Jacob, there is a last one about the natural, if this tool can be applied to natural pastures. Hello? Jacob, vous m'entendez là-bas, dans la salle?
Oui, on te reçoit, Michel.
Oui, donc Jacob ne me reçoit plus là.
Jacob, can you hear us?
I can hear you now.
Yeah, there's the last one on the natural pasture. Can this tool be adapted to natural pasture?
No, someone talking, I can't hear now.
We can hear you very well. Can you hear me? OK, il ne nous entend plus.
I can't hear you, Michel.
But we can hear you well.
Although I'm in French channel and I can't hear you.
Lamine, tu me reçois?
Sorry.
Oui, je te reçois.
Oui, donc c'est de son côté, oui.
Jacob, can you hear me?
OK. Bon, c'est pas grave, hein. On peut envoyer la réponse par...
Michel.
Oh, sorry.
Oui. Donc, on est à la fin, on a consommé notre temps. Je ne sais pas si Lamine voulait étendre. Ça semble un peu très intéressant. S'il y a une question brûlante, peut-être, on va essayer que Jacob nous reçoive. Sinon, on peut nous en arrêter là. De toute façon, c'est des études en cours. On aura l'occasion d'en reparler au fur et à mesure que le projet est en cours. On a eu une bonne participation. Je pense que vous avez mis votre nom et votre institut, peut-être votre mail dans le chat. Comme ça, peut-être on pourra entrer en contact avec vous. Et Lamine et Nadine vont mettre leur email dans le chat aussi si vous voulez contacter l'équipe AICCRA directement pour avoir des informations plus avancées et des réponses à des questions auxquelles on n'a pas pu répondre aujourd'hui. Donc, vous laissez toutes les informations sur le chat, ce que vous voulez. Donc, ceci étant, je remercie tout le monde, les deux présentateurs. Je vois que Bernard est toujours là. Donc, on aura l'occasion d'avancer ces réflexions et de voir comment on pourra aider nos éleveurs à utiliser tous ces outils à bon escient et que les décideurs politiques aussi puissent soutenir ces actions pour le développement de l'élevage en Afrique de l'Ouest et spécifiquement dans le Sahel. Donc, ceci étant, je vous redonne la main, Nadine et Lamine, pour la suite. Merci beaucoup.
Oui, je vais peut-être rapidement prendre la main et introduire Nadine, non seulement pour voilà, donc lui donner l'occasion de s'exprimer, même si c'est peut-être pour 1 minute, avant peut-être de reprendre la main et remercier tout le monde. Nadine, si vous m'entendez, ou bien s'il vous plaît, il y a une question quand même assez intéressante dans le chat box venant de quelqu'un qui nous suit depuis Haïti, et puis ça fait très très longtemps qu'il s'intéresse quand même à ces webinaires, qui pose la question de savoir, même lorsque les informations climatiques sont mises à disposition des éleveurs, ces derniers savent comment les utiliser pour prendre des décisions éclairées, c'est une question. Ensuite, existe-t-il également des programmes d'accompagnement pour les aider à interpréter correctement ces messages climatiques? J'aimerais quand même, si Jacob ne nous reçoit pas, peut-être inviter Nadine ou Prosper qui est là dans ce groupe qui pourrait peut-être prendre 30 secondes pour essayer de répondre à cette question. Merci.
Oui, merci. Bonjour à tous. Je suis Nadine Mourou, la coordonnatrice du projet AICCRA. Pour le Sénégal, nous utilisons cette opportunité pour remercier les panélistes d'abord qui ont bien voulu nous accompagner dans cet espace d'échange avec nous. Donc, merci à vous, Michel, Jacob et Bernette, pour nous avoir donné autant d'éléments que nous allons prendre en compte dans le cadre du projet AICCRA pour cette année 2025. Revenons à la question, c'est effectivement, oui, nous avons travaillé sur un produit particulier avec le ministère de l'élevage et d'autres acteurs qui étaient impliqués. Et nous avons pu fournir de l'information climatique, pas que l'information climatique, mais aussi le conseil qui va avec. Donc, nous avons effectivement pu toucher près de 2000 éleveurs et nous faisons des évaluations. Et on s'est rendu compte effectivement que les prises de décision ont été exécutées par rapport à la décision d'utiliser des ressources, à la décision de protéger les animaux contre les différents stress qui peuvent survenir avec la température et tout. Il y a effectivement, c'est beaucoup plus des actions liées à la gestion même du bétail. qui ont été effectivement les actions qui ont été, disons, exécutées. Il y a un autre aspect lié au temps de vaccination. Donc, les éleveurs ont su l'information la plus pertinente quant à la décision d'aller vacciner les animaux au bon moment, parce que ça fait partie des informations d'alerte qui sont partagées, mises à disposition. Nous fournissons aussi des informations sur le risque lié à la disponibilité de fourrage naturel au niveau des points d'eau également. C'était important pour eux de savoir cela et de pouvoir mieux s'organiser sur la temporalité de leur transhumance. Donc, voilà, en gros. Pour la deuxième partie de la question, c'était par rapport au programme d'accompagnement à l'interprétation. Oui, quand le message est envoyé, il y a tout un mécanisme. D'abord, on n'envoie pas le message, on fait d'abord une sensibilisation, un profilage. D'abord, ce ne sont pas des éleveurs pris au hasard, mais on travaille avec des membres de coopératives. Cette année, on a travaillé avec les membres de la KSDE. Aussi, on a eu les profils venant d'une association ADIT qui travaille aussi avec nous. Donc, on sait à peu près qui reçoivent les informations, quels sont leurs besoins en termes de communication et en termes voilà, de disponibilité à les recevoir. Et à la fin, on fait un retour d'expérience. Et quand ces cibles sont engagées, il y a un petit moment de sensibilisation qui est fait, de formation aussi, sur la compréhension de l'information qui est envoyée. Donc, il y a l'accompagnement, effectivement, qui est très important dans cet aspect-là. Sur ce, je ne vais pas tenir long. Vous pouvez continuer à interagir avec nous, avec nos emails qu'on va partager. AICCRA, c'est un projet de multi-partenaires. C'est vrai que ILRI est là, mais nous travaillons beaucoup avec, que ce soit des partenaires du secteur public, du secteur privé, mais aussi des OP, des organisations, et les médias. Donc, c'est basé sur une approche de co-construction. Donc, tous les acteurs dans leur mandat sont vraiment impliqués, sont partie active dans le développement des outils. Nous vous présentons aujourd'hui 2 nouveaux outils et nous espérons revenir avec vous pour travailler sur l'amélioration de ces outils et voir dans quelle mesure ce sera le mieux adapté pour le contexte du Sénégal. Vraiment, merci beaucoup d'avoir donné votre temps, de votre énergie, de votre intérêt à ce webinaire. Nous espérons pouvoir continuer avec d'autres thématiques dans les jours à venir. Et je vous souhaite un bon appétit. On est presque à l'heure de repas et au plaisir de vous revoir de ce jour. Merci.
Merci Nadine. Il faut mettre ton mail dans le chat.
Okay.
Ton mail dans le chat, oui, avant qu'on ne ferme.
Merci beaucoup, Michel. Je ne sais pas si j'ai le droit de reprendre la parole, mais c'est juste pour remercier tout le monde, remercier et présenter en tout cas Nadine, qui est la coordinatrice du projet AICCRA, et dire que AICCRA vise à améliorer l'accès des prestataires de services de recherche et de vulgarisation agricole en Afrique, particulièrement au Sénégal, comme aujourd'hui, le thème d'aujourd'hui, aux connaissances, aux technologies et aux outils de prise de décision permettant de renforcer la résilience de l'agriculture et des systèmes alimentaires face au changement climatique. Donc, vous retrouvez bien avec quand même la thématique d'aujourd'hui. Et je tiens vraiment à remercier chaleureusement pour votre présence et votre disponibilité tout au long de cette session, donc à tous les participants. Aussi, un grand merci à nos présentateurs pour leur contribution riche et éclairante. ainsi qu'à notre modérateur, le docteur Michel, pour la fluidité des échanges et à notre interprète, bien évidemment, qui a permis une communication inclusive entre les participants francophones comme anglophones. Donc, je tiens également, au nom de toute l'équipe, en tout cas, à exprimer toute notre gratitude à nos partenaires co-organisateurs, en l'occurrence le ministère de l'Agriculture, de la Souveraineté alimentaire et de l'Élevage, mais aussi l'Agence nationale de l'aviation civile et de la météorologie. Voilà, merci également à toutes les questions pertinentes qui ont enrichi les discussions et permis de mieux cerner les enjeux liés à la résilience pastorale face au changement climatique. Nous espérons que cette session quand même vous a été utile, qu'elle ouvrira quand même la voie à de nouvelles collaborations. Et merci à toutes et à tous et à très bientôt pour un prochain webinaire AICCRA. Voilà, merci beaucoup. Je ne sais pas si on ferme ou bien est-ce que quelqu'un d'autre voudrait peut-être ajouter. Merci.
Merci Lamine. Bye bye, de mon côté, ça va.
Merci beaucoup encore. Merci. Au revoir.